Hello everyone, my name is Sin, and today I got for you the current setup for my Whirlwind barbarian that I've been playing for the most part since my druid died a while back in level 40 something. It's been a couple of weeks. I've been playing this barb on and off, as well as a necromancer that, if you've seen the last video, you know what happened. It's a very good build. It's a whirlwind. I've been taking some ideas here and there, but for the most part I've been testing stuff and seeing what I like or what I don't like, and yeah, I have some cool ideas to share. Starting off with the passive tree, this is what I'm working with at the moment. Very standard. However, I will say that I think early levels you shouldn't bother with Unbridled Fury or Rage, because you cannot sustain the amount of Fury that you'd need, and instead of that you can just take Unconstrained is a good alternative. And other than that, there's a bunch of stuff you can swap around here. So starting with Lunging Strike, you can honestly take any of these. Honestly, take your pick from the basic skill. Any of them works really well. I think Lunging Strike is decent for farming content, which is what I'm using right now. If you don't have any good fortified generation, which we'll talk a little bit when we talk about the aspects, you could honestly take Bash and take any of these through, realistically. This node here gives you all the fortify you will need. Or you could take Flay for a vulnerable chance, as well as a big amount of damage protection from this. Frenzy is there as well. Frenzy, I think, is the weakest of the four. Yes, it gives you a big amount of damage reduction here, but first you need to keep the stacks up, which only lasts for 3 seconds. These last for 4, I believe. No, 3 seconds as well, so both of them last for 3 seconds. None of them is particularly easy to keep the uptime on, so take your pick between these. I'm currently just farming mid-tier nightmare dungeons, so this was my go-to. Then you have Whirlwind. You want to get as many ranks as possible in this, obviously, and make sure that you're using a slashing weapon when using Whirlwind, because otherwise this node doesn't work. You could potentially take this, but I think you benefit more from the bleed from this, in my opinion, as well as giving you an extra way of scaling with scaling damage over time. I much prefer this, honestly. Here, another way to make vuln on the enemies. And then we're just taking the standard shout setup. Shouts are phenomenal for barbarian, too good in my opinion, but it is what it is. They're incredibly powerful. If you've seen any barb build, you know you take these 3. As many ranks as you can on challenging shout, because it increases the damage reduction you get. And here it increases the amount of resource generation you get, so very good. Then the passives for shout duration and healing. Here reduction while berserking, and fury generation. You get berserking from Warcry as well as Wrath of the Berserker, which we are also using. And then you just pick passives here and there to round out the build as you go. If you want a more defensive setup than this, you could drop Wrath of the Berserker and instead take Iron Skin. I played with that for a bit. Ultimately, I decided I didn't need it right now. Maybe at higher levels I would swap, but right now I don't need it. It's a very good ability though. It gives a massive amount of barrier. With an extra power, it also makes you unstoppable and gives you damage reduction, so that's awesome. And you can get it to heal yourself as well. So it's a very good option that you have instead of Wrath of the Berserker. I wouldn't swap any of the shouts for it though. Shouts are a core part of your build. It's just a bad idea to ever remove them. Unfortunately, for better or worse, you kinda need shouts as a barbarian currently. In expertise, realistically, you're always you want to have a two-handed sword as your main weapon. I don't currently do. I have an axe, therefore I'm using this. But if you have a two-handed sword equipped, then you'd want to use this instead. Now, for what you'll be using in the gear, I'll go through the legendary mods first, and then I'll talk about the stats that you want on each piece. So I have armor. Whenever you hit, very easy to keep 100 stacks with bleed. So when you're clearing a dungeon, it's very easy to keep maximum stacks. Here I'm wearing this unique. I wasn't sold on it to begin with, but as I started playing around with it, and the more I think this unique gets better, the more you have that stabilizes your fury generation. A couple procs of these in a cycle of shouts, or cries as they are called, is enough to give you close to 100% uptime on them. So at the beginning I wasn't really sold on this, but I really warmed up to it. I think it's a very, very good unique. And of the uniques that you can use, I think this is probably the best. I'm also using this unique. I don't think it's crazy out there. It's fine. Mine rolled pretty badly. If I had +4 Whirlwind, yeah, maybe. But as of right now, I don't. And this is only alright-ish. If you have a bad roll like this, I think you could probably get away with just using a rare with Whirlwind levels, lucky hit chance, and then whatever else you can get. Physical damage over time, stats if you need them, whatever you might need. Here I have damaging an elite grants you a barrier, very important, as I have then this, which increases your damage by a lot while you have a barrier active. On my boots, this is just a neat thing to get pulse enemies in periodically when you Whirlwind. It's not super often. Don't feel like you need to fit this in your build if you can't. Don't struggle for it. It's okay. It's nothing wild. On the weapons, this is a big deal. This is the most important damage-wise legendary power you could get. Put this on a two-handed weapon to maximize its value. Very, very good. Then I have the barrier one here. I have attacking with the basic skill, increase the damage of the next core up to 30%. It's alright. I don't really min-max this for the most part while fighting things. I would need to use 6 lunging strikes before whirlwinding. I don't really bother with it for the most part. I much rather have a different power, which I currently don't have access to. And lastly, I have the deal increased damage based on the available primary resource when cast. This snapshots with Whirlwind, that's why it's so powerful. If you Whirlwind while at max Fury, means you will have the maximum value of this for the whole duration of that Whirlwind. That's why it's so incredibly powerful for this build specifically. On rings is where you get the most amount of fury generation for your build. Both of these I think are the things you should aim for. Whenever you cast a shout, it reduces the cooldown of said shout by the amount of enemies you have around you, and this just gives you an increase on fury generation whenever you have a shout active. So these synergize very well with each other, and the more rallying cry uptime you have, the more fury you're going to have. So both of these very, very powerful. Lastly, on the neck piece, I'm currently using a defensive one actually, which gives me fortified generation when at max fury. I'm at max fury very often, so this is a very good thing to get. This is the power that's giving me about 90% of my fortify. If I'm not using these, there's nothing wrong. Oh god, there you go. There's nothing wrong to use bash instead of lunging strike to get a good fortify amount. And that's because all of our gems in our gear are damage reduction while fortified, because in my opinion that's the best thing I can use for defensive jewels. Life is not very good, as this amount is on your base and is not increased by the amount of life that you have on gear. So these are actually really poor. I really wish they change this in the future, because this just ain't it. It's really, really, really weak. An alternative, if you don't like this gem for some reason, or you want to try something else, I think Flawless Amethyst, or whatever amethyst level you're at, is also very good. The biggest danger for this build is damage over time from poison and fire, so I think this is very good. Now on stats, I think there's a very interesting distribution here that you could go for. In my opinion, the best thing you could get in the pieces, so in helmet would be high life roll and cooldown reduction, and then the other two should be whatever you can fit. A resistance, potentially poison, would be very good, and some stat, if you wanted to go for maximum damage, that would be strength. Say you don't have this unique, on the chest piece you take maximum life, damage reduction of whatever capacity you can get, and ranks of challenging shout to further increase the damage reduction you get from this. As I said, on the gloves you could get crit strike, ranks of whirlwind, physical damage over time, and lucky hit chance. On the pants, I think the best thing would be maximum life and just a bunch of damage reduction. Distant enemies, well fortified, close enemies, generic damage reduction, all of those would be very, very good here. On the boots, we want to take as much movement speed as possible. This is a very slow build because we don't have a movement skill. So movement speed after killing elites, and then fury cost reduction is phenomenal. These are actually a really good pair of boots. On the necklace, the most important thing to get, in my opinion, is ranks of all defensive skills. And after that, you want to get cooldown reduction and fury cost reduction, permitting, obviously. You can also get levels of No Mercy, this passive over here. So you can get ranks of heavy-handed and No Mercy, I would say, are probably the best ones you can get in terms of damage. Outside of that, you could get some damage reduction, as you see there as well. It's also not bad. For rings, you could get maximum life on both of them, crit strike chance, lucky hit chance, and vulnerability. I know some people don't like to invest in lucky hit chance, but it gains a lot of value with this chest piece, in my experience. But if you really don't want to take that, then I would say probably crit damage would be your best go. And after that, for all the weapons, you really want crit strike damage, vulnerability damage, and core skill damage. And lastly, strength. These would be the perfect weapons. If you can't get that, there's a bunch of other things that you can get. Damage over time, damage to bleeding enemies, damage while berserking, all of those are fairly good. They're not perfect, but they'll do. And the best base for your slashing weapon would be a two-handed sword, as they come with crit strike damage. Like this. Lastly, I will have all of these in builder that I'll link in the description in case you want to check anything out, with the passive tree and the legendary aspects that I'm using currently, as well as all the uniques and the rolls you should aim to get in all of those to help out. For the gems in the weapons is emeralds for vuln damage. Vuln is a phenomenal stat, in my opinion, far too good. If your build doesn't have vuln, you should be looking to get vuln some way. It's amazing the difference that it makes. And then on your jewelry, you want a flat armor. Now, Paragon board. So this is what I have right now. I went with... So this board is the Weapons Master, and this one is Emerage. And this is the pathing I took. I put here Wrath. In hindsight, I think it would be much better putting Exploit first rather than Wrath, because the ability to put Vuln on anything for 3 seconds is far more valuable than getting 3 Fury on Crit Strike. So I would put Exploit here as soon as possible. After that, I came up here, I took all of these, and I put Martial to get the shout reduction whenever I use a different shout. This also helps a lot with uptime on your shouts, and as I said, shouts are the core of this build. And lastly, I went all the way here, picked up this glyph socket, and put Exploit here. In this case, I think it would be better to get Exploit earlier and put Wrath here, as whenever possible. And these are my stats, as you can see. And yeah, that's pretty much the build. Any questions that you might have, feel free to ask. And stick around for a quick showcase of the build in action in a Nightmare Dungeon. Hope you guys enjoy. Catch you in a bit. Alright, so as you can see, everything is exactly the same as we just talked about. Same skills. Oh, shit. Ow. Alright, just trust me it's the same, because otherwise I'm gonna die to this thing. But yes, everything is the same. Right, so this is level 27 Nightmare Dungeon with these affixes. Nothing too difficult unless you stand inside of that, as you saw. Whenever you get to a pack, you just want to pop all your shouts. Get in there. And especially if you have your challenging shout up, you can Jesus, that's scary. You can kind of tank anything. And you basically become a meat grinder. Very, very strong in terms of damage, especially once you get the 3 tablets on your Paragon board. You unlock the ability to gain Fury on crit. You unlock your ability to your shouts reducing the cooldown of your other shouts. Very good as well. And lastly, gaining on hit Vuln is insane. Vuln is such a massive amount of damage. It's kind of ridiculous. I expected to get nerfed or changed somehow, because the damage you gain from it is beyond anything else you might get. It's really, really crazy at the moment. If your build doesn't have it, you should be looking to find a way to put it in, because it is unreasonable high. shrine, very good. It means we don't have to worry about being damaged. Absolutely not, I'm not doing that. It means you don't have to worry about taking any damage, but more importantly, it gives us speed, which we do not have a lot. Which is the main thing I would really like to get more of in the build at the moment. And maybe a couple more, a bit more health as well would be very good. Because my pants and my helmet have a very low amount of health currently. For the level of gear, for the level of content I'm doing, obviously. They have decent amounts of health. God, the slow. It's a very satisfying gameplay as well. In my opinion. It's simple, but it's very enjoyable. If I would put any criticism at the moment on the way the build is working, I think it's too reliant on shouts to feel good. To the point where I think if they ever feel the need to nerf shouts, as they might, because every barbarian build is running them, it's gonna be awful. The build's gonna feel terrible. Because I don't actually think Whirlwind is that strong. It's kind of just the fact that shouts are really good. They're really, really powerful, and they make Barbarian look way more powerful than it actually is. If you overnight nerf shouts to do maybe 50% of what they are doing right now, it's gonna look bad. It's gonna look real bad. Barbarian's gonna fall. So hopefully they can find a way to change Barbarian, or change the way it's scaling with his shouts, because it is undeniably very powerful, especially on hardcore. And yeah, as you can see, the gameplay is really, really, really powerful. But more than that, I think what it makes a very good build to play on hardcore is that it's straightforward. There's no, for the most part, you don't need to worry about any snapshotting of any kind. Not at this level, certainly. Some of the powers give you more damage if you are smart with it and like stack a bunch of basic attacks before going into your Whirlwind, but as you can see, there's no actual need for you to do that. And yeah, very, very powerful build. Hopefully this is interesting for you guys to see. I'm not sure how much more content I'll be putting out on Diablo before the season comes out. I might mess around with a couple of builds here and there, but I don't want to burn myself out of the game before a new season comes out, especially because there's not that much to do in the game right now outside of Nightmare Dungeon pushing. And after doing like a few, maybe 100 or so, I'm starting to feel a bit tired of it, so I might take a break and do some other stuff. But yeah, that's Whirlwind Barbarian as it is right now, my build. Hopefully, just to prove what I was saying. Exactly same build. All the items are the same. All of the Paragon is the same. All the skill tree is the same. Everything is the same. So, Hope you guys enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you guys later.